Hello, and welcome to Fox One.
We learn facts, not fiction. No fake news here at Fox.
Recently, an earthquake occurred underwater off the coast of Alaska.
Even though it's pretty far away from Columbus, it's still good to be talked about. The seismic waves.
Tell me, Aaron, what exactly are seismic waves?
Well, seismic waves. I'll tell you what. I'll just tell you and all the viewers what an earthquake is and how it works.
Yeah, sure, that would be great.
Okay, so basically there's this big huge layer of the earth called under the crust. It's called the mantle, made of molten rock. And these things are called convection currents. And they
Circle up and down as they heat up and cool off.
absolutely correct.
And there are also these big plates of rock called tectonic plates, and they make up the Earth's crust. They're all broken and cracked up, and those convection currents are making those plates move, pushing, pulling, and scraping up against each other.
And when those plates are scraping against each other, sometimes they get stuck and they won't budge. And they have a whole bunch of names. Different ways they can get stuck.
Okay, look here. This is a normal fault, where one plate, the hanging wall, slides downward.
This one, and this is the reverse fault. The plates on the foot wall slides down. Both in normal and reverse faults are dip-slip faults.
And this right here is a transform fault, where the two plates slide past each other, also known as a strike-slip fault.
Okay, so when the two plates get stuck, they try and move against each other harder to hopefully get loose, but when they slip, even though it's less than a millimeter, the results can be really devastating.
When the two plates get stuck, they build up a ton of pressure. And when they slip, the insane amount of pressure is released all at once.
Oh snap, not good.
Never a good result.
Well, anyway, the pressure that is released is released in the form of seismic waves. The waves of the pressure can destroy almost anything.
The waves are released from the focus, which is the exact location where the earthquake occurs. The epicenter is directly above it.
How do we find where the epicenter is?
Well, take a look at this photograph. Or not photograph, a map. Okay, so the labeled cities have earthquake watching stations, and they detect the seismic waves, and they find out where the ranges of the three stations meet, and that is the epicenter. So right here, Salt Lake City, Portland, and Los Angeles, all three ranges meet at San Francisco. That is where the epicenter is.
So the waves spread out like super fast speeds, right?
Yes, approximately 5 miles per second, which is approximately 300 miles an hour.
Precisely. Seismic waves go everywhere. Cities, bridges and buildings, cars, interstates, people, everything in its range is affected. This is called an earthquake.
Now, Aaron, how do we determine the size of earthquakes?
Well, I don't exactly know.
Well, we use a tool called a Richter scale.
Baron von Richthofen.
9.
Well, what is it then?
Well, a Richter scale is a tool that measures the movement of tectonic plates by writing on a piece of paper the activity of them.
Like a schedule.
Not really. It writes lines like a graph, and we can tell if there's an earthquake when it writes really squiggly lines on the paper. And by the type of lines on the scale, it determines the magnitude or size of the earthquake.
Oh, I remember that.
But we don't really use that much anymore.
Why?
Well, because we now have a tool called the Precise Moment Magnitude Scale, or MMS for short.
What does it do?
Well, both the Richter scale and the MMS Both measure the magnitude of earthquakes. But the MMS uses newer and better technology, which makes the Richter scale somewhat obsolete, except for tiny earthquakes. We also use a tool called a tilt meter.
We also, what is that?
Well, it is another tool that detects change in vertical or horizontal movement.
So it determines how level something is.
Precisely.
So what happens next in an earthquake?
Okay, so good question. Basically, it's pretty straightforward. The seismic waves, flying at approximately 300 miles an hour, obliterate everything in its path. Only the strongest structures on the most stable ground can survive.
What about concrete bridges?
Depends. In the San Francisco earthquake, 1989, a bridge over the San Francisco Bay collapsed.
Yeah, it just went.
And the part that collapsed was made of concrete.
Oh,
Okay, so
so what happens next in an earthquake?
well, hold on. Let me show some pictures of what happens in an earthquake. Would you volunteer helping? Or help? Okay. So basically, here's a picture taken from Google Maps. I do not know the location. It says something about Corso Umbeto or something. Anyway, so this is what it looked like before, and then this is what happened after the earthquake. See, the clock tower is still, the bell tower is still there, but it was strong. And then all these houses weren't as strong as that one, so they all collapsed in the earthquake.
And everybody knows a boat's not going to be sailing on a house and like just.
Now, from this one, we can tell there was a tsunami because the tsunami, when it came up over the land, because of the earthquake, it brought the boat over with it and lifted it on top of this house.
So it looks like boats love houses.
Yeah.
Never knew it.
And see, look at this picture. I think this was taken in sometime in like Singapore or somewhere down in Southeast Asia in an earthquake. But here,
That's busted in Farewell.
yes. So this bus was apparently crushed by this building, which is sad because we don't know how many lives were lost. We don't know how many lives are lost every time there's an earthquake because
It
There's-
can vary.
there's so many things that can happen.
Yes.
Okay.
So what happened in the recent earthquake in the Pacific?
Well, Aaron, the earthquake occurred underwater off the coast of southern Alaska. It was approximately 25 miles underwater, which is fairly shallow, actually. The seismic waves formed a tsunami, and the massive tsunami waves hit Alaska and are heading towards the west coast of Canada in the U.S. soon. People are advised to get above 100 feet above sea level,
Or they'll be dead.
more or less. Now, on to the important section.
The aftershock.
The question.
How do I survive an aftershock?
You need to answer that.
Basically, an aftershock is a series of mini earthquakes after the big one. And sometimes they can be just as powerful or more powerful than the big one.
Make sure to get a strong and stable building. Well, make sure to get two. You don't have to buy a strong and stable building if you don't want to. Anyway, make sure to get to a strong and stable building and have a survival kit and a first aid kit.
Stay above 100 feet.
Wait, what?
Because as
Why?
soon as you'd be dead.
Oh, yeah. How the heck do tsunamis happen with an earthquake again?
If an earthquake happens underwater, the shifting plates disrupt a column of water and shifts higher, and it goes out like a ripple effect. And the wave is called a tsunami and get to 100 feet tall. And there was one in 1980 that was 656 feet tall.
That's higher than the Empire State Building, people.
Wow. Even though it was formed by a volcanic eruption, Mount St. Helens, tsunamis can be huge. And there's a force of a huge wall of water heading at 600 miles an hour, which can break everything in its path. Cause huge damage.
Right. Well, You people make sure to stay above 100 feet and make sure to bring a first aid kit, an emergency survival kit, food, and spare clothes in case of a tsunami.
Not that we'll have any here.
True.
Well, hopefully this broadcast helped you a bit more on earthquakes and how to survive them.
Stay safe, comrades.
Dismissed!
Okay.